Hey everybody, welcome. My name is Adam. We're gonna give it a few more seconds while folks roll in, but I'm super stoked that you're here. I'm actually pretty stoked too that it's almost the weekend because I'm excited to get out there on the trail. I hope you are too. So, welcome to onX's Master the App, onX 101. If you're joining us, you'll see a chat feature. If you want to say hello, you can say where you're joining from and what you drive, what your rig is, or what your form of adventure is. One of the things I love when I'm out there is meeting so many people, enjoying the outdoors and off-roading in so many ways. So we'll get started in just a few seconds. If you do want to follow along tonight, I encourage you to get out your onX app, or if you have a laptop or something, you can use it in the web browser. We're going to look at both, but you can follow along a little bit and practice what you're seeing. Cool. I see Texas, Wisconsin, Washington State, Reno, Montana everywhere, Oregon. I love it. Cool. All right. Well, we're going to get started here in just a few seconds. I'm curious if anyone's, going out this week or weekend. I sure hope you are. If you aren't, hopefully by the end of this, you'll be pretty stoked and have a new trail to try or a new trip to try. So, all right. So you're here. I'm here. Let's do it. Welcome to onX Offroad 101, Master the App. You're going to leave here tonight with, all the tips and tricks for using onX to find cool trails, get out there, maybe do some camping if you're into that, and just, get out there where we all love to play in our playgrounds, right? So I am Adam Zolak. Hello. You may find me on the internet as Bantha Overland, but I travel in the truck camper you see here on my Ford truck, and I am sort of a off-roader, overlander, dispersed camper. I also love to hike and do all sorts of fun activities. I'm sure you got your activities you like to do as well. And I often travel with my travel buddy there, Val. Maybe some other vehicles or friends. It's one of my favorite part, being in the middle of nowhere with some old friends or maybe some new friends I meet along the trail. So I hope that's true for you as well. And if you want to learn more about me, you can check me out at Bantha Overland. I'm trying to inspire and enable more people to get out there. So I hope that's what I accomplished tonight. So let's get into it. So, why do we love it, right? We love getting out there, right? We get really stoked about getting out in nature and the outdoors, getting on cool trails, maybe exploring a little bit. Like, feel free to drop it in the chat why you love off-roading, why you get into it. What else do you like to do when you're out there on the trail? But it's just where I recharge, right? I just need to get away from the hustle and bustle of daily life, and it's just so great getting out there. And one of the things I always like to remind people about, one of the things that I love so much about onX Offroad that brought me in the first place and keeps me coming back, there are over 650,000 miles of trails, off-road trails in onX in the US and Canada and Baja. And that's like a lifetime of trails, right? I could probably never check out all those trails. So I hope tonight you get some tools and tips to really figure out which of those trails you want to go explore, what's near you, or if you're taking a trip where somewhere you might want to go explore a little bit further from home. All right, so tonight we're going to talk about Find Plan Go. We're going to talk about how do we find cool off-road trails that are near us, whether that's near home or that's near a place that we are traveling intentionally, or we just find ourselves on a longer trip. We're going to talk about how we plan within the cool trails we find, the activities we want to do, camping, maybe we want to do something other than off-roading. How do we remember which trails we want to check out? Maybe there's a point of interest. Maybe we want to plan that trip with some friends. And we're going to talk about going. How do you actually get there on pavement, off pavement? How do you track where you've been? How do you remember that so you can share it with people in the future and relive it yourself? So if that sounds exciting, I'm glad you're here. We're going to dive into it right now and go to the app. So I'm going to start here in onX Web. So if you go to a web browser and you go to onxmaps.com and you log in, this is what you're going to see, a map like this. Now we have all these cool camping spots from another masterclass we did last month, and everybody in the session contributed. So that's what you're seeing now. But you start with a map, right? And we could also look at this on mobile. I'm going to show mobile a little bit tonight. You can see here on my mobile device, and I'm going to show you both interfaces, but I really like to start on the web. And the reason that is because the map's a little bit bigger. I have a little bit bigger of a screen, but you can do everything I'm about to do on the mobile app, and I'm going to switch back and forth to show that to you. And I happen to have an iPhone, but if you have an Android device, works the same way. If you have a tablet, you can use Android Auto, you can use CarPlay. So there's tons of different interfaces you can use onX Offroad on. choose the one that works for you, and you can go ahead and check it out. I also do hope you follow along tonight, but if I, go a little too fast or anything, we do have Q&A, and you can go ahead and put your questions in Q&A. We have some awesome onX support reps on who will help you out and get your questions answered. So feel free to put fun stuff in the chat, questions in Q&A, and the session will also be recorded. So if tomorrow you're like, I really want to go back and check out that section about finding a trail with the right difficulty level, you can check it out on YouTube. The recording will be there, and you can go back and watch it and follow along in your app, and get all the little details you need. All right, so we're going to get into it. So my home base is Denver, Colorado, and so if you open up onX Offroad, you're probably going to see the area where you live. So if I were to hit this location icon in this lower right, this map would go to my current location. Same thing on the mobile app. And so one of the coolest parts about onX is it shows you where you are in the map, right? And so you know where you stand, you know what kind of land you're on, and we're going to get into the map, and I'm going to show you a little bit how that works tonight. So the first part we're talking about is finding, right? How do you find super cool off-road trails? Well, as I start to zoom in here in Denver, you're already going to start to see them, right? You see all these trails over here, these green trails, these blue trails, these black trails. These are all off-road trails. They're dirt trails. They're trails you can off-road on. And the color is trying to give us a little bit of detail about how easy or hard they may be. And it's really important, right? Because you may love really easy trails, right? And you might not want to do anything that's going to be like too crazy and epic. On the flip side, your form of adventure may be super hard stuff, and you never want to go on an easy trail, right? And so I love that onX lets me find the right level of adventure. So living in Denver, a little secret place I love to go, and I'm going to show you tonight in case you're in that area. If we go north a little bit, there's this cool area in Wyoming called Pole Mountain. And if you're familiar with it, it's an old artillery range, and it is now part of Medicine Bow Route, the national forest, and it's super cool. I'm gonna come in here, and one of the things you'll see as I zoom in, and let me just hide this so yeah, there we go. Yeah, there we go. One of the things you'll start to see is these roads, right? So you'll see things like I-80 and surface roads like that, but you start to see these roads like this tan road or this green road or this blue road, right? And these are all off-road trails in onX, right? And so if you click on these roads, you'll actually start to get information about those trails. So this trail, for example, is a motorized road named Eagle Rock, road ID 714. It sounds like a Forest Service road if you've ever looked at a Forest Service map. It tells you what it's accessible by, like full width 4x4 vehicles, which is my truck, or maybe you have an ATV or a dirt bike, right? It tells you the length of the trail, the surface. Do you need a license? Do you have to have a licensed motorized vehicle to be on it? So you start to get this information about these trails. And if you're ever curious about, well, how do I know what the heck the difference is between these trails? If you come down here to your account and you hit legend, maybe, let me try it this way real quick. If you come down here, let me show you that again, to dirt or the filters and come down to the bottom and you hit legend, you'll see the different legend for trails, right? And so this beige trail that I was showing you, it says difficulty unknown. And then we see green, blue, which we see these trails on the map. And that's just the difficulty. If anybody out there is a skier or snowboarder or something like that, greens are the easier trail, blues are the medium trail, blacks are the hard trail. There's even red in onX. I would never run a red in my vehicle, but it might be your form of adventure. And you can come in here and you can see this is the key for the map. So I'm looking at this area, and this area has some green trails and some blue trails. And so it has some easy trails and it has some moderate trails, which for me is my type of adventure, right? So, often when I'm starting to come into onX, I'll start looking at the map like this. I'll just start, zooming out or zooming in and saying, well, which area has some of the trails that I want to see, right? And one of the things you'll see is that I have some filters set for myself. So I'm going to show you that again. If you come in here, there's like this little filter icon, and I'll show it to you over here on mobile too. So here I am on the map, same kind of thing. You can pinch and zoom with two fingers. I actually like mobile because you can just use your big grubby fingers. If you come down here to these filters down here, and you tap it, you're going to get the same thing. So that's how you do it if you're on mobile. But over here on web, I'm going to hit these filters. And you can come in here and you can filter the trail type to what is right for your vehicle, right? So in my case, I'm not looking for single track. I don't have a skinny vehicle. I have a high clearance 4x4 and I need full width roads. So I'm going to turn these off for a second. So I'm just going to turn everything on. And then you can also do difficulty level, right? So you can do that easy, that moderate, that difficult. So I'll show you how this works. I'll zoom out a little bit more so you can really get a sense of how this works. So you can see some black trails, some red trails, right? All these different colors. So I'm going to filter for full width and some trails are going to go away. I'm going to filter for high clearance. Some trails are going to go away. I'm going to come in here and say easy, moderate, right? And so over time, you'll figure out what kind of trails you might want to do. But now I have this nicely filtered. And if I start zooming into different areas and you open up this lovely Discover card here on the left, you'll start to see the trails that are in your map area. And if you start to hover over those, you'll actually see them highlighted. Like as I hover over Blair Wallace Road, watch this road here, right? It lights up and it's orange, right? And so I know I'm looking at that road, and I can sort of correlate like, oh, this is easy, that's easy, that's easy. I see where these trails are. And you might be saying, well, like, how the heck do I know if I want an easy trail or a medium trail or something like that, right? Well, the colored trails you can actually click on, right? And if we click on this trail, we get a little bit more information than we get about some of these other trails in here, right? The trails that were sort of beige, right? And so we see it actually has a difficulty. It's a 1 out of 10, right? And we see that someone said summer and fall is the best time to go. We see what it's accessible by. There's even a description, right? Someone actually wrote a description. There's some beaver ponds. Like that's super cool. I want to see some beavers, right? And so as you come down here, you'll even see photos, which I love. I'm a very visual person. And so come in here, see some aspens, see a flat dirt road, right? See some cool rocks. I like rocks. I like some scenery, right? Looks like there's a picnic ground. You just get to a sense of what this area is like. There's some deer in there, right? And so this is called a guided trail. So when you're looking at a map, and I'm just going to turn all these trails back on real quick. But when you're looking at a map and you see a green trail or a blue trail or a black trail, those are guided. That means a trail guide went out there. And you may say, well, who the heck is a trail guide? Who are these people? They're community members from onX that volunteer to run these trails and add that information. They add photos, they add descriptions. It's an awesome program. And so if that sounds like something you would be interested in doing, I'm actually going to show you here. If you just Google onX Trail Guide, you'll find this awesome webpage on the onX website. And trail guides get a free onX Elite subscription, which by the end of this, you're definitely going to want an onX Elite subscription if you don't already have it, and some opportunities to get some cool gear and just really support the community. And so I'm a trail guide. I like to tell everybody about it. It's fun. If you like going on missions, you can go out there and pick one of these trails, like all of these little beige trails here, need a trail guide to run it. And a lot of times when I'm traveling, I don't just go on the guided trails, right? I don't just say, well, I only do green and blue trails. I actually look at the colors in a particular area and say, you know what, this is pretty much a green area, right? With a little bit of blue. And so I'm guessing that these other trails are also similar to that. And I think it's super fun and exciting. Like I love going on a trail where I don't exactly know what's going to happen. Maybe it's going to be some challenging rocks. Maybe there's going to be a mud hole or something like that. And so I like some of that adventure and I often mix both the guided and unguided trails. So anyway, first thing to take away is if you're looking for trails, right? That's how to tell these trails on the map. It's beige, it's green, it's blue, it's black, it's red, right? If you're not sure, you can check out that map key. And the coolest thing about onX is that it lets you know where you're allowed to be, right? So any of these roads that are on this map, you're allowed to be on, right? And that gives me a lot of confidence that I don't have to worry about that. And we'll talk about some specifics here in a second about how do you figure out private land and stuff like that. But I love that. It gives me a lot of confidence. And this is onX pulling data from hundreds of sources, BLM, US Forest MVUM maps, state and local governments, national parks. And so it's just so cool that onX brings it all together in a single place for me. So that's what I often do. I'll often start looking on the map and finding a place I want to check out. This area happens to be about an hour or two from my house. And so, it's not too far from home. And I'll just come in here and say, what's cool, right? Like we saw that other road that looked cool. I might look at a couple other guided trails. Like let's look at this one real quick. What is this trail called? Crow Spring Road, right? And come in here. This one's a little bit more technical. It has some rocks. It does have a little bit of standing water right now. So I just get a sense of like, hey, I want to come here, right? And another thing I often love to do is play while I'm there. I like to camp. I like to hike. I like to paddle. I like to do stuff like that. If you're ever curious about who owns land, because public land's our playground, you can just click on the land in onX, right? And so if I click on this area, it says this is Medicine Bow Route National Forest. It says it's government lands, right? If I'm like, ooh, what's this yellow land over here? Any guesses? BLM, right? BLM is also our playground, right? And if I come up here and click on this land, it says that's the Mountain Land and Cattle Company. I bet you that's private land, right? And so onX really helps you to understand, where you're allowed to be and where you're not allowed to be. And that gives me a lot of confidence and lets me enjoy being out there so I don't have to worry that I'm on someone's ranch, right? And so actually, if you zoom in on your map a little bit more, you'll see these red boxes, right, which is an indicator of that private land. But if you actually come into these filters again, and you come down here, there's a layer called private land. And if you turn that layer on, that's really what is going to show you if it's private land. And as you zoom in, you'll actually see the owners, right? So you can see the Mountain Cement Company owns this, Mountain Land and Cattle, Bureau of Land Management owns this. If we zoom out a little bit, you'll see that Medicine Bow Route owns this. And so again, if we were to open up our map legend here and we scroll down a little bit, we'd see Bureau of Land Management is a little bit yellow, Forest Service is a little bit green, private land has this red border. And so it's super easy to just sort of zoom out, right, and see, look at all this green. There's a bunch of forest, right? And there's cool off-road trails in it, right? If we come over here into Utah, it's going to be yellow, right, for BLM. And there's some BLM up here in Colorado, Western Colorado. And so, onX is really letting us know what off-road trails can we go on, what public lands can we play on. And then one of the coolest things, if anybody is familiar, anybody a dispersed camper out there? Anybody love going out, finding a campsite in the middle of nowhere for free, hopefully away from the people and the crowds and everything, right? So onX recently just launched a dispersed camping layer. And so I'm going to zoom in here so you can see this happen. So look, watch these trails. I'm going to come here to my filters again. I'm going to come down here to the dispersed camping layer. And I'm going to turn this on and watch what happens. You see all of these roads that turn yellow. So that is saying that you are allowed to disperse camp on either side of that road, wherever that yellow highlight is. Now you have to find a site. You got to use an established site, right? But you can come in here in onX and you can say, look at this. There's like 50 miles of forest roads in here where you're allowed to disperse camp. And there's like one or two campgrounds in this entire area. And it's super cool that you can come in here and find dispersed campsites. So we're going to talk about how to do that in a minute. But I just find it super cool that you can come here and know, hey, you are legally allowed to disperse camp on Crow Spring Road. You can do it with confidence. You're allowed to be there if you're following the rest of the rules. So we're going to get into that in just a second. So, something else I do when I'm trying to find an area to play in is I'll just try and get a sense of like what the area holds. Like maybe you're someone that loves deserts, maybe you're someone that loves trees. This area has a lot of cool rock formations. And so, if I come in here and I start to look around, this is a topo map, right? And so if you're familiar with topo maps from off-roading or hiking or whatever, they show elevation, right? They show the topography of the landscape. So if I start zooming in, I actually start to see these little bumps, right? And these bumps are probably rocks. They're probably elevation change or mountains, right? So start to see little lakes, little bodies of water. I see some river drainages, right? And so it's pretty cool, right? I start to actually see these look like maybe, are they hiking trails? Yeah, these look like hiking trails, right? So we see Valley Massive Trail, Devil's Playground Road. Anything with Devil's Playground is always a good bet. So you can come in here and see some other activities. You can see, looks like there's a campground. If you didn't want to disperse camp, there's a picnic area. And so I try and get a sense of just finding an area I want to play in. Does it have cool off-road trails? Does it have a hiking trail if that's what I'm into, right? So I'll come in here and do that. Now, so far, we've been using the Topo base map. And so that's just the background map we're seeing. Now, if you come down here where it says Topo 2D and you switch this, you can come to Topo, which is what we're on, or you can come to satellite, right? And so I'm going to switch to satellite real quick. Now, I love this. I love satellite. Like onX has really awesome, crisp satellite imagery. And I can come in here and I can start to zoom in and I can see, well, what the heck were the bumps on the topo map, right? Check this out, right? It's like super cool rocks, right? And then if that weren't good enough, I love to come in here and switch to 3D. And my map is going to tilt a little bit. And I'm going to hold down the control key on my laptop. It might be different for you. And I'll show you this on mobile in just a second because it's probably easier on mobile. But now I can tilt up and down, and I can rotate, and I can even pinch to zoom in and out. So look at this. This is like a super cool area. Like, look at Turtle Rock. Has anyone been there? It's like, it's a super cool area. Like, kids love to climb on these rocks. I love to climb on these rocks. There's all sorts of cool drives and hiking trails and stuff like that. And so I am often in satellite imagery mode, and I'm often using this 3D capability to really see the area and say, does that look like a cool area? You know, is it just a dusty dirt road through flatlands, or is there going to be something interesting? So let me show you that on mobile. So here we are on mobile. And I just want to show you this because I want you to see how I use my fingers, right? So a couple cool things you can do, like you can use two fingers to pinch and zoom. Everybody knows that, right? But you can double tap. Check that out. So you can double tap to go in. You can actually take two fingers too. And you just tap once to zoom out, right? So you can double tap in. You can two finger to go out. And then we're going to look at that same area, Turtle Rock, right? And so very similar to web, you can come down here where it says Topo 2D. You can switch that to satellite, and you can switch that to 3D, right? And at this point, again, we're going to see those rocks. Let me refocus that a little bit there. And then you can just take your two fingers and you can do that tilt. Like, look at that. That's so cool, right? For understanding what an area is going to be like. And then just like a clock, you can turn your fingers. Oh, let me do that better. Sort of turn it counterclockwise, or you can turn it clockwise, and you can rotate around there, and you can really see what you're about to get into. And so one of the ways I love to use this is I actually use this to sort of drive a trail and see what I think it's going to be like. So let me show you that. So we're going to go over here to Crow Springs Road, which I was showing you before. And we're going to come in here and we're going to tilt. Let me go back to 3D here. All right, we're going to tilt and we're going to turn. And then I'm literally just going to sort of start driving down this road and see what I see, right? And so I can see some trees, right? And I start to see these sort of like spur roads, right? And if anybody out there said, heck yeah, I'm a dispersed camper, you know what that is, right? That's probably a dispersed campsite. So I just love satellite mode because it gives me a sense of what the road is like, and it also helps me find dispersed campsites. So that is generally how I find cool stuff in onX. And I'm like, I want to be there. I want to go. I can off-road, I can camp, I can hike. Those are the features that I use. So I hope that's helpful for you. Now I want to transition a little bit more into planning. So after you've found that trail or you found that area that you want to go explore and you want to go play in this weekend or next week, how do you start to remember it? How do you start to make a plan? How do you make sure when you're there and there's all this stuff to look at, there's these boulders and there's trees and there's, 16 spur roads. How do you make sure you go where you want to go? Or if you decide to go play a little bit, how do you make sure you get back to somewhere you know? And so just like I was showing you on my phone, I'm going to go back over to this Crow Spring Road. Now, one thing I'll often do after I, go into the guided trail and look at it and read the description and the difficulty in the photos, and I say, hey, I want to be on that trail, right? One of the things I'll often do is I will drop a waypoint to remind myself about that trail. So there's a variety of tools you can use to put things on the map. There's Route Builder, which we'll look at it in a second, which you can actually draw a route out and you can navigate to that route and along that route. And then there's also waypoints, which I add a lot, which is where I mark campsites, off-road trails I want to check out, hikes, just cool places I want to stop. So right now, I'm going to add a waypoint. So I'm going to click this waypoint icon up here in the upper right. You can see my orange pointy finger. I'm going to click that. I'm going to put it at the beginning of the trail, just a rough reminder, right? I'm going to say Crow Spring Road 4x4, 4x3. And you can pick an icon. So for this, you can pick your own icons. I'll just show you what I use. So I often will come down here and pick the 4x4 icon, just this cool Jeep icon. And then I, oddly enough, have colors that I use for certain things. So everything that I haven't done yet is this pink purple. Things I have done is this blue. And as I'll show you here in a second, all of my dispersed campsites and my camping is yellow. And it just lets me quickly scan the map and figure out, is it a campsite? Is that something I haven't done? Is that something I already did? You don't have to do what I do. What I would suggest you do, though, is pick some icons, pick some colors, get used to it so your map stays a little bit organized. So I'm going to go back to that pink with the Jeep icon. And then I highly recommend folders, which I'll share more about in a minute, but it just generally keeps stuff pretty organized. So I'll generally say the year, the month, and then the place. So I'll just say 2025-06 Pole Mountain. And I'm going to say, let's make a folder. And then this is in the folder. And so at this point, I have a nice reminder, if I ever click on this, that this is this Crow Spring Road 4x4. And I can see down here, it says Crow Spring Road 4x4. And I start to remember that trail. So I'll often do that for a couple different trails. Like this blue trail looked pretty cool too. So I think I'm going to mark that one. Now I want to show you two things about guided trails that are super awesome and definitely pay attention to. So one of them is trail reports. So if you're wondering, geez, it's really cool. A trail guide ran that maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, but like, what was it like last weekend? Trail reports let anyone in the onX community come in here and report the status of a road. So you can do it. I can do it. I do it. I hope you do it as well. But it's just an awesome way to stay part of the community and contribute and say, I was there. These were the conditions. This is stuff you might want to know planning this a trip to that trail. So you can see Paul here was here, what, 2 weeks ago. He said it was open, said it was pretty easy. Cade was here. She said it was open. She even took some pictures so we can get a sense of what kind of vehicle she took. So if your vehicle looks like that or it's smaller, you can probably get there. And then you can see way back in March, it was temporarily closed. Probably, yep, snow, right? And so trail reports, an awesome thing. Please check them out for trails you're going on, and please add your own trail reports. And then the other thing I want to show you is you might be wondering, well, like when this trail says it's 4 out of 10, what the heck is that? Right? And so we come down here to the difficulty rating. There is a description that the trail guide wrote. So you can see in this case, right, there's a small spur where it's uneven, rutted, that could be difficult. So we think ruts. Is it wet? What's my vehicle like? Maybe I don't care about ruts. Maybe ruts are like butter for me, right? And so there's a suggestion on which direction to run this, if that could be a concern from you. The other cool thing is if you click on this trail difficulty rating, this little question mark here, you'll actually see the difficulty rating. So this isn't just like the trail guide was like, man, that was tough, right? It's a 5. onX, I think is a super cool thing, has these defined difficulty ratings, right? So if you're out there and you're a trail guide and you're saying you may encounter shallow water crossings or obstacles under 12 inches on the trail, like I'm out there with like a tape measure being like, how big is this rock, And it changes over time, right? But I really appreciate this because it gives some kind of standardization where it's like, well, I know if I'm getting into a 5, right, obstacles might be up to 2 feet deep, right? It wasn't just someone thought it was hard. It said hopefully someone was out there with a tape measure trying to figure out, was it a 4, is it a 5? I generally think in terms of like green is yes for me, blue is I should check it out for me, and I don't do blacks, but it can be useful to read these descriptions as well to see what's right for your level of adventure. All right, so I'm also going to add this Twin Mountain Trail. I'm going to, again, add this waypoint. Now I'm going to show you how to do this on my mobile device because I think it's cool to, like, if you're following along on your phone, I'd love for you to know how to do that. So I'm going to go back to my phone here. All right. I'm going to go back here, go back to Topo. I'm going to go from 3D to 2D. I know this is a lot, so you can feel free to watch the recording. But I'm going to go down here. You can see the Twin Mountain Trail that we were just looking at in my web browser. I'm going to come in here and I want to add a waypoint. Now, you could come down here to Tools, and you could tap that. And you could come in here and you could mark a location with the waypoint right here. But I'm going to show you a little trick that I actually really like. So if you just take your finger and you just sort of lazily plop it down on the map for a second, you'll get this option to add a waypoint or build a route. So I'm going to do that again. So I'm just going to hold my finger down for a second. So I can add a waypoint, right? I can come in here and pick that same 4x4 icon. I can pick my favorite purple color, pink purple color, and I can add it to my pole mountain folder, and I can save it, right? And so just like I did on web, I now have that waypoint. I also have my Crow Spring waypoint. And so I'm starting to get this collection of things that are going to make up my trip, right? So I want to show you one more thing about how I do this for dispersed camping. So if any of you out there are dispersed campers, I just sort of want to show you some tips that I use. So we're back here in our web browser, and here's Crow Spring Road, and I'm going to go into that 3D mode here that I showed you that I love so much. And we're just going to start driving down this road. And if you know anything about dispersed camping, it's generally within a couple 100 feet of the road. It's on roads where it's allowed. And we know it's allowed because we have this nice yellow line because we turned on our dispersed camping layer here, right here. And we're going to come down this road, and we're probably going to start seeing sites where we could potentially disperse camp. So like, let's come down here so you can see there's this sort of ghosty trail here. There's a ghosty trail here, right? These are all places where people have dispersed camped in the past. And so I'm just going to start adding some waypoints to sites that look pretty cool. Now I'm just going to say DC, and I'm going to use this cool dispersed camp icon. You don't even have to name them if you want. That's why I generally use the same icon in the same color. So I'm going to pick yellow. Like I said, this way I always know it's a camping option. I can very quickly see that on the map. I'm going to add it to my folder, my Pole Mountain folder. And we're not going to go through everything about dispersed camping tonight. We did have a really cool advanced masterclass last month where we spent a whole session diving into how to find awesome dispersed campsites. So if you want to check that out, you can go on YouTube. And there's a new blog post on the onX Offroad blog that talks all about dispersed camping, finding sites, legal regulations, what you're allowed to do, what you're not. And so we're going to put a link to that in the chat, but I'd highly encourage you to check that out if you're into dispersed camping along with your off-roading adventures. So anyway, I generally would go down the trail and like I said, sort of just drive and just look for cool sites. And you'll probably see this, right? Like there's literally a small tow behind trailer. So it's a site, right? So you'll start to see people that are literally camping there or camped there, not too long ago. So again, I'm going to start marking these, putting them in my folder just so I have a few options. And let's go down the road just a little bit more, see if we see anything cool. Now, I always like cool rocks, right? So like that looks like a heck of a good site, right? So you can see this little spur trail, a little bit of privacy. I think that's a really cool site. So I'm going to mark that last one. And then I have a couple sites. Now, I don't attempt to mark every single campsite, under the sun. I'm just trying to mark some options to say, hey, this area looks cool. There's a couple sites. When I get there on the grounds, maybe those sites will work out. Maybe we'll see a better site. In a little bit, I'll actually show you how I use onX in my truck on CarPlay to drop extra pins as I'm driving, because sometimes I see really cool sites that I didn't see at home, right? And sometimes the sites that I marked at home, somebody's already in it, right? It's already occupied. There's like a bunch of cows in it. It's a mud puddle, right? It's like the joy of dispersed camping. And so sometimes I just, will mark a couple sites in a couple areas just so I have some options, right? All right. So those are some of the basics about how I start to plan. Now, one thing you might have noticed, I turned the map all around. And so if you ever just need to get back to like your regular map, you can see this little compass here. You can click it. It'll put north back up. You can come in here. You can go back to 2D. It'll put your map flat. And you can even come back to Topo if you want to take some of that satellite detail off. So really easy to sort of get back to the north up map if you need to. And so you can see we're starting to, have this idea of things we might do, but now's a great time to think about a route. And so you don't have to do this, but I like to draw a route that says, I think I'm going to drive this way, because often it looks so easy on the map, but when I'm there, it starts to get really confusing. And so I love to draw a route to say, hey, I think this is the way I'm going to try and go. And if you're there and you want to try other stuff, that's great, right? That's okay. So I'm also going to turn off this dispersed camping layer just to get that yellow off the map, clean it up a little bit. There we go. So there's this route builder tool here. So you can click on it and you're basically going to get some tools over here on the side. And the first thing you do is you click where you're going to start. So in this case, I know I'm coming from 80, which comes off of 25 and everything. I'm not going to draw the whole route to my house. Um, I know where I'm going till I sort of get to the trailhead, but you could draw a route from your house. And we'll talk about navigation in a few minutes. But basically, you just pick a point where you want to start. I'm just going to drop it on I-80, right? And, after looking on the map for a while, this area down here looked cool. It's where the cool rocks were. And you can see as I follow along the trail, let me zoom in a little bit, that this red line just starts following the road, right? And so I'm doing a snap to route. This is basically just snapping to roads I'm allowed to drive on, right? So if I go this way or that way, it's sort of going to snap different places. And then from time to time, with my finger or with my mouse, I can just click and it's going to add a dot and it's going to say like, definitely go into that spot. And so you can use that to sort of give it a little bit of guidance. So if I wanted to turn off on this blue trail, I might come up here and then come up here and add a dot, and then come up here and add a dot, right? And then come over here, and then I want to come over here to this Crow Spring Road that we were looking at camping, right? And I'm starting to build a route, right? Like these are the places that I think I want to explore, right? And I might even come up here. Like I definitely want to stay on dirt, right? Like dirt for days. Right? I might come this way, and then I think we're back to I-80 down here, right? Yep. So we can come back down to I-80, and that's the end. So we could say, two-day pole mountain route, right? And I also make that pink. There's different line styles. So if you want dashed or solid or different line weights, I normally just sort of leave these and go with pink. And I'll also put that in my folder. So I'll go ahead and save that. And so now I have my route. And so now when I'm staring at this map and I'm like, where the heck am I supposed to be? And I see my dot on that map, right? I'll know if I'm on my route. I'll know if I need to turn left and things like that. You can also come in here and see, well, what is the elevation on the route, right? Like if you look here, looks like the highest point on my route is over here. So that may be important if it's the spring and it's snowy, right? And you're trying to figure out where might I encounter snow, things like that. So at this point, we sort of have a plan. I want to show you real quickly. We don't have time to go through it all, but I want to show you a couple other cool things you can use to plan and sort of decide, is this still a good idea? Do I want to be there? So one of them is weather. So if you open up weather down here, lower right, you'll see the current weather, but you can also switch to the weekly weather. And wherever your bullseye is here, you see this sort of crosshair, it'll tell you what the weather is there. So I'm going to put it over my dispersed campsites. So you can sort of see this bullseye. You come in here and you see what's the wind, what's the temp. Looks like 70s, 80s, 50s at night. That's nice and cool. Could be a couple thunderstorms or showers. So that gives me some idea of like pack the rain jackets, but looks good, right? It's not going to be super cold. There's not going to be a blizzard in the middle of June, right? So that's one useful thing when you're planning. Also, if you come up here to these filters, there's some different layers, right? So we looked at dispersed camping. We looked at private land. You can turn on precipitation. You can turn on temperature, right? And you can hit this layer details and you can see what the visual temperature guide is. So like yellow and orange and then red starts to get pretty hot, right? You can do things like that. And then one of my favorite layers is, well, I wish I didn't need it, but one of my favorite layers is the active wildfire layer, right? So if you turn that on, turn smoke. I even like to turn historical wildfire on because I don't necessarily want to be in an area that's been burned recently. You may. That's everybody has a different form of adventure. But if I come in here, I don't really see anything that changed on the map. I see this area that turned a little bit yellow. And so if you zoom in a little bit, you'll actually see this was a fire in 2020, the Mullen fire, the Badger Creek fire in 2018. So I might want to start thinking about those areas and thinking, oh man, are they going to be sort of, a little burned out? I probably want to look at the satellite imagery. And then as I start to zoom out, I start to see this gray, right? And so this is showing smoke, right? And if you come up here, this is the telltale sign of a forest fire up here, right? Like, unfortunately, it looks like near Bridger National Forest right now, there's a fire. There's the horse fire, right? This is smoke. And so if we were to look at the legend for this layer, right, red is not good. You don't want to be here. Here's the fire. So here's the actual fire boundary. And the really cool thing I love about onX is these little dots, these are satellite detected hotspots. So it actually shows you like the fire is probably actively burning in this area, And so I just love that it lets me decide like, hey, maybe I really wanted to go to that area this weekend, but there's a fire there and maybe I shouldn't be there. Maybe I want to give some space to forest fire personnel and stuff like that. So looks like Pole Mountain's pretty clear right now, but I always like to look at that layer. And then something else you might want to look at too, we'll just turn these off real quick, is even like cell phone coverage. Like maybe you have to take a meeting to make a long weekend, or maybe you need to call someone in your family. You can turn on these cell phone coverage layers and you can sort of see like, what's it look like for T-Mobile? What's it look like for Verizon? What's it look like for AT&T, right? And so if you were to turn one of these on, like we'll turn AT&T on, and you again open these layer details, you'll see that 5G coverage is a little bit darker. And then the lighter the color, the less data and voice coverage, until the point of something like, let's look at T-Mobile again, because I think they have not the greatest coverage there. You'll actually start to see these spots, which there's probably not a lot of coverage where we were thinking of camping. So maybe that would compel you to move north a little bit and camp in this road system that's probably 2 or 3 miles north to maybe get a little bit better connectivity if that was important to you. Or maybe you're someone that likes to be off grid and you're like, this camp is perfect because everyone I'm camped with will have to be there and won't be on their cell phones. So some other things I just like to look at when I'm planning. All right. So I know that's a lot. Um, I want to touch on a couple things, sort of, we've done the find, we've done the plan. I really want to get into go, right? So it is Thursday. I'm excited about taking a trip this weekend. And so what are the things you do before you go, right? To make sure that you're ready to be out there. If you don't have data, you can navigate, you can find things. And so probably one of the most important things in onX Offroad are offline maps, right? It's an awesome feature. It works super well. But the trick is you have to create and download an offline map to use it, right? And so I'm going to show you how to create the map here in your web browser and download it on your mobile device, your phone. But you can do that on your phone, entirely if that's the device you're using. So over here on the left, you see offline maps. I'm going to click that. And we're going to get this little pop-up that lets us make our map. Now I'm going to pick new offline map. And it's going to ask us to name it. I'm going to name it Pole Mountain. And then it says choose satellite imagery detail. And so this is a little confusing for folks. So I want to spend a little bit of time on this. So basically, if we read this, it says offline maps include your base maps, Topo, so the first maps we looked at that showed us the rocks and stuff like that. It contains content like roads, trails, recreation points. So like these roads, right? This campground we saw down here, things like that. And my content. So my content are waypoints and routes and things we've added. So pretty much everything we see. But then we get this option, right? Low, medium, high. And we're like, whoa, which one should we pick? Well, I generally go with medium. And what you're really picking is how crispy do you need that satellite imagery to be, right? How important is it to you that you're on that trail, you don't have any data, and you need to look at that satellite image and be able to say, oh, there's a dispersed campsite, there's a rock, there's a tree, right? There's very specific stuff. I find that medium's pretty good in the case that I need to like scramble and say, oh, where's a different campsite? Or what's that trail look like? Is there a giant pile of boulders in the middle of it? So I generally go with medium, but you can pick, you're basically just using a little bit more storage on your device. Anyway, once you make that decision, pick medium, pick whatever size you need. You can go ahead and hit save, right? And then we get this lovely message that we have to download it on our mobile device, which I'll show you here in a second. And we get this box on the map. See this green box? This is showing us the area. So anything in this box is going to be part of our offline map right here, right? And so let me go over to my phone here and show this to you. All right. So here's my map. You can see my campsites and my trailheads and my route and all this fun stuff. Right, I can come here to offline maps down here at the bottom. There's Pole Mountain, and we can see here that there's just an arrow. If we just tap that arrow, it'll say downloading. And then depending on what kind of connection you're on, I'm on a broadband connection at home, it'll download pretty quickly. But you can do it over cell. You can do it with your Starlink. Like it's pretty snappy in most cases. But definitely do this when you know you're going to have data, where you're stopping, at a brewery, whether you're at home, if you have Starlink, right? And just make sure it's with you, because then when you're out there, you're going to have all of this information with you and be able to continue to navigate and know where you are. So super important bit. Always download your offline maps, download maps for areas you think you might go to. It can be a lot easier when you know you have a good fast connection. All right. And so one of the cool things I really want to show you now that we're ready to go is, let's say I actually just wanted to get to this trailhead, right? I'm like, hey, let's go, right? So if you pick something, whether it's a trailhead or a route or whatever, those are always going to have a navigate option. And if we click navigate, right, you can use Apple Maps, you can use Google Maps, but those are not necessarily so great for dirt roads. I don't know if you've ever tried to navigate on a dirt road with Google Maps, but sometimes it sends you in some very weird places. And so onX recently launched on-road and off-road navigation. And I recorded a short video showing that in my neighborhood and then also in Death Valley National Park. And it's super cool just being able to have one navigation that goes from door to pavement to dirt and gets you to the cool place you want to adventure. And I highly recommend checking it out. So let's look at that video. So one of the cool things you can do in the app is, if you know where you want to start your trip, you can pull up that waypoint or route and you can hit navigate. And in the past, you've been able to navigate using Apple Maps or Google Maps, but there's a new option for onX navigation. And if you select that, it'll give you turn-by-turn directions, on-road and off-road, which is really cool because a lot of mapping services do not work very well when you get off-road as well. And so if I wanted to go ahead and follow this route, I'd hit go.
Head north on Harlan Way, then turn right onto West 76th Avenue.
And so you can hear the prompts. And so you can zoom in, you can zoom out. If you pop this up, you can look at the detailed directions if you need to see that. And then you can also preview the route. And then you can always also sort of switch between your heads up, zoomed in view and the total route view like this. And then you can also switch your orientation. So if you want your direction facing north versus north facing north, you can do that. You can toggle the sound on and off. And so you get your written instruction and you get your audio instruction. And so if you just have a phone, you can go ahead and use your phone. It also works in landscape, which is nice. I happen to have CarPlay, and so I'm going to go ahead and show you what that looks like here on CarPlay, and I'll drive around a little bit so we can see this in action.
In less than half a mile, turn right onto Sheridan Boulevard.
And one thing I like to do sometimes too, like if I'm passing a trailhead or a campsite I might want to check out later, I'll use this mark button, and you can use it to either start recording a track or mark my location. So I'm going to mark my location, and you'll see it drops a waypoint right there, and it just makes it really easy for me to go back later in the app, and I can update it and say it was a campsite or whatever. But a lot of times that's how I mark my campsites, because I just find cool campsites as I drive by it. Yeah, so I love onX navigation. Give it a try. And I also love that little button in CarPlay or Android Auto where you can drop a waypoint. It has found countless dispersed campsites or trailheads or things I want to go back to and look at on the map. So highly encourage you to check that out as well. All right, so we're coming to the end. We talked about how to find, how to plan, and how to go. One other thing about going, sometimes we're going with friends, right? And so we're going on a trip together. And so two things I love to show people, because I think we always get a lot of questions. So one, what if my friend shared a GPX file with me or a route or something like that? So you can always come into my content, and then you can hit import, and then you can pick a GPX file or a file that you've gotten somewhere else, and you can import it into the map. So very cool feature, especially if you have data coming from somewhere else and you want to bring it to onX and try it out. Great way to do that here in my content. And the other thing I love to do with friends is, and the reason I made this folder, aside from just keeping a little bit organized, right, is I can come in here and I now have this folder. I'll show you this again in my content, right? Pole Mountain, I have my 5 items in it, and come to these 3 dots and I can hit share. And I can share it as either a view-only folder, which means nobody else can make changes except for me. But I often, when I'm traveling with friends, use this contribute feature. And so if I select contribute, this means my friends are going to be able to add routes and waypoints. We're going to be able to collaborate on ideas for the trip, right? Which is super cool. So I'll hit contribute. I'll hit share. And now I'm going to get this link. And so my friends and I often just have a text chain, maybe use WhatsApp, Facebook, something like that. you can just share the link with your friends, and anyone you share this link with will become a contributor and be able to add stuff to that folder. And you'll be able to plan a trip together. So I think that's super cool as well. So check that out before you go if you're going out there with friends and you're going out there together. All right. I know we're getting close to the end. I thank you for being here. Thank you for sticking with this. Don't forget to go back and look at the recording if you want to check out any of this in more detail. We have some great recordings from advanced masterclasses on dispersed camping, on using the colors and the markups and staying organized, and all sorts of great topics. So check that out on the YouTube channel. With that said, I'm going to check in here with Melissa and see if there's any big questions that would be helpful to address together before we end for the evening.
Hey, Adam, great class. Everyone is saying thank you in the chat. They seem to really feel like it was extremely useful. There were a couple questions about importing GPX files, but you just touched base on that, and that's a really great idea for maybe a future advanced masterclass. So Adam, if you just want to let them know kind of the difference between our 101 masterclasses and our advanced masterclasses.
Yeah, so I'm glad everybody came today. It's for folks that are just getting into onX and want to learn the basic features about finding cool trails, planning a trip, and getting out there. Our advanced master classes are like deep dives into specific topics to help you get the most out of onX. And so as you saw tonight, there's a lot to cover. We didn't even get to all the basics of everything. Those advanced master classes go really deep. So like for dispersed camping, we went into a lot more of the specifics about how to find sites and use particular features specifically for that purpose. So there'll be an advanced masterclass most months. And so you can go ahead and check the link that we'll be sharing, or you can just search for it. There's a web page for advanced masterclasses, and we hope you come back after you've been out there a few times to go even deeper to get the most out of onX Offroad, which hopefully lets you get the most out of the outdoors and cool off-road trails. All right. Well, thank you very much for being here. I hope you got something from it, and I hope you're about to go out there in the next few days and the next few weeks on an adventure. I hope to see you out there on the trail. I always meet really cool people out there, and I hope to see you out there soon. Until then, I'm Adam, and I hope to see you at a future Advanced Masterclass. Bye.